It's a real honor to have Grant. He's been with us a few times before. So Grant's planned once a month meetings here in the library, once a month in Coquitlam, and so we're having one at his home next Sunday.
Yeah.
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 So
we'll go from there, and we'll. As I said, we're trying to donate all of my books here, so that if anybody wants to read the books, but it doesn't look like they're gonna. Right now, it's 50-50 whether they'll take them. They got all these rules about. It's like I said just a minute ago, like they got to be 24 UFO books and consciousness books got to be more popular than some of the Korean books that are in here. It's like
24 books,
or more, maybe more than that. If I put Desta's books in here, because my assistant was working with me, helping me, because there's so many things to do. I mean, setting up stuff, and then I said she channels. So then I got a couple of channeler people, like these are trans-channel people. So my idea is that there's a field that has all the information, and a trans-channeler can get into the field. It's usually a woman. You disassociate, you shut down the left brain, and you get in the field and you bring the material back. So my assistant, she's had 2 readings where she was said that she was one of the oracles of Delphi in one of her past lives. So she channels, and she's a trans-channeler. So then I have a woman in Albuquerque, and I say, okay, what's the answer to this? And then I go to Desta, okay, here's the question, what's the answer to that? And I compare what they say. And then I said, why don't you take your channeling and put them in a book? I can't write a book. I said, you don't have to write the book, you just take the channeling stuff and you put it in a book. So she put it in a book, and then she did a second book, and now she's done 5 books. It's like, you could write a book, and she's got them all set up. She's got about 15 or 20 books ready to go, where she's putting these books out. So it's an exciting field to be in. So I wanted to hear what other people had to say, why everybody's here, and what interests them, and because I always say that the most interesting people, I've been fighting with the UFO community for quite a while, and I say that the UFO sighting stuff just a waste of time, and you guys are just chasing stuff, and it's not going to get. You got to talk to people who have actually had an experience. Because a lot of them are getting messages, they're being talked to and stuff like that, and 40% of all people who claim they've had contact with non-human intelligence say at one point during their experience they knew the answer to everything in the universe. And I say, 40%, why would we not talk to these people? Well, you at least talk to them. You don't have to believe them, but holy cow. And so that's why I'm so interested in people around, because a lot of people are walking around with stories that they've never told before, and now we can do things where I can interview somebody, and now I'm doing one with a woman on the island who had never touched her story for 30 years, heard that I was coming to Vancouver, came and we had a meeting, and I interviewed her twice. I just sat there, I didn't do nothing during the very first interview, I just sit and listen to her talk. She told her story, and then she was reading a transcript of a regression she did in 1995 about being on the ship, and then she said, oh, my brother, and I was reading the transcript, and whatever her brother's name was on the ship. She goes, he was on the ship? I didn't know that. And then there was somebody else on the ship that she didn't know, and she was just blown away. So I just take that, and then I give her a bunch of questions the second time, and she answers the questions, and then we just take it. And with AI now, we can actually take it and give her a book. Here's your book, and it's maybe 60 pages long, and it'll tell your whole story. It'll put it in chapters and stuff like that. And you can do that kind of stuff now, where you don't have to sell it. You put it on a bookshelf, so when you die, your kids come and say, "Oh, I didn't know Mom or Dad was in that," and to tell your story. Because we live in this field is the #1 thing in terms of reality, how reality works. That's what's going on. This phenomenon is trying to teach us how reality works. So it's like being in the Super Bowl. It's the biggest story that ever hit the world. And if this DNA experiment works that I'm setting up with this couple out of Oregon, if that experiment works, it's game over. I mean, it's game over. Because this experiment you can do over and over and over again, which says that consciousness is DNA, and when you switch the consciousness, you switch the DNA, and we can get it on paper, and you can go to do that experiment any lab you want to do. It'll come out the same way every time. And so I'm always interested to hear people's encounters and stories, because it's almost like people have volunteered for this. They're in this, and I don't think much happens randomly. That this stuff, most people, especially people who've done books or have figured it, and then I say, did they tell you to write the book? And they go, yeah. Did they help you? Yeah. It's like, you use this over and over again, and that's not in the book. They don't tell that part of the story, but they were actually instructed and forced to do it. One woman said, "I'm not writing your book. I'm not writing your damn book. You can write your own damn book." And they said, "No, Sherry, timing is everything. And now's the time. No, not writing your damn book." And she reads what she had already read. She woke up at a typewriter on her computer, and it was on page 3.5, and she never opened the Word program. She goes, "What's a Word program doing, Alvin?" And then when they said they wanted to do the book, and then she said no, and then she's reading it. Yeah, that's pretty good. And so she agreed to write the book. And then her two daughters. They're in a small real estate firm in Wisconsin. They got a court injunction to stop her from publishing the book, and she managed to get the book published. She tried to commit suicide 3 times. It was just a horrendous experience for her. And so those kind of stories I've interviewed. Sherry,
Sherry Wall.
Yeah, she's something else. She's got a wild story. She was interviewed. She was regressed by, I think, the top hypnotist in Illinois, or the top hypnotist in the United States. So
A lot of effort.
yeah, they spent a lot of money researching the case. So maybe we can just sort of go around and your story. What's your story?
Oh, I really got immersed in ufology in 2006 when I discovered YouTube. So I had an interest in UFOs, so I was shocked, stunned,
Aliens
amazed.
created YouTube.
Yeah, so all these YouTube documentaries are at my disposal. So that's what really got me into it. But prior to that, I published a book in 1999 with a chapter on Buddhism and UFOs. I published 3 Buddhist books. So I've always had an interest. I always believed in it since I was a kid. But I only had one experience. It was 6 days before I started this UFO meetup group in 2009. I saw a UFO in Kitsilano. Just a small, it looked like the Boogosphere in Vancouver, 2-foot thing just going by like this for 10 seconds. And I talked to Grant about it. It was almost like a signal, and the UFO meetup was an immediate success. So it was like the scene in Vancouver. So it was kind of like maybe some type of communication or something.
Yeah, it's time. That's what they always say, it's time.
Yeah. Okay, that's my story briefly.
But you'll get the same thing in trans-channeling. Like if you're hypnotizing someone and you want to find out, are you actually talking to the higher self? As soon as it starts saying we, you know you're talking to the right source. As long as they say I, it's still the person. You're talking to the person. Once they say we, then you're talking to some sort of group. That's because they always use plural. It's always the oneness concept that they're all together. Because there's always that. I call it the theory of wow. It's like, what was the UFO doing? No, it's just there. It's like, nobody ever thinks about that. Like, what was it doing? It wasn't doing anything. It's like, it's just saying hello. Here we are, and then it has the demonstration of the jet. Like you have the Chris Bledsoe, the famous Chris Bledsoe, in a black helicopter over his house during the event, and you always see these black helicopters. So then I had a friend from England who wanted to show me all these photographs. I said, I'm not really into photographs. He wanted to show me, and he's a real experiencer. He's showing me, and I'm going, and then he shows me there's a black helicopter, and he's got Crohn's disease, so he's always in the hospital. He's in downtown London, in London Hospital, and he's sitting there having a cigarette outside. And he said this helicopter was like 50 feet in the air over the black helicopter, and then he takes pictures, and he starts taking pictures of all these black helicopters. They're falling all over the place, and they have a little orb in the photograph. It's like, that's pretty weird. And then suddenly there got another person who had black helicopters following him around, and they've got an orb in there. And I said, has anybody got a picture of a black helicopter that follows him around that doesn't have an orb in it? It's like, it's just this weird sort of.
So it's probably not human then, right?
Well, it's to me, it's like a display where they're doing these weird things, or the day after your sighting, some people, men in black people, come to your door, and the woman's got the wig on sideways, and they're saying that they're doing a poll and stuff like that. And you're going, these people are weird. Like, what's going on here? And like, what's the chances they would know that you had a sighting, and then come? And then they've confirmed. Like, there's an interview done with the guy who ran the big program, this big OSAP program that was talked about in the New York Times. The guy that ran it said, we've confirmed MIB. And then they said, really? What part of the government? And he said, no, the MIB. And he said, like, the guys? Yeah, we confirmed they actually exist. That there's actually these people that come around, the UFO people that dress up like whatever. They can appear as whatever they want. Yeah. And they want this drama. That's just an interpretation. They want this drama. They want it to be really weird where, why would you do stupid things? There was, when I had 75, when I started, when I had my sightings, I wanted to interview everybody in the town. One of the first cases I came across was saying that just makes no sense. Like the kids are partying at the reservoir above the town, and they're drinking, and it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, having a big party or whatever, and all of a sudden this UFO comes over and shoots this beam of light into the water, They're going, oh, and they all start freaking out. And then this white thing appears out of the water, and it starts coming towards them, towards the dock. And they're going, oh my God, they're just freaking out. This thing's coming at them. And it gets right to them. And then once somebody gets a rock and throws it at the thing, and it breaks into 5 pieces, and it goes, beep, 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 and the pieces all go back together and goes up the beam, and the UFO flies away. And that's like totally bizarre. It doesn't make any sense. And there's a lot of stories about UFOs that break into pieces, and then they fly in zigzag, and then they'll go back together again. And it's almost like this display of just like the way I say it's awe and curiosity. They want to get. That's why I said, are you obsessed? Because they want to get you going. And you talk to people who've had like experiences like yours where they go, I can't just get out of my head. Like, what the hell? It just goes for years. And that's what they do. They get your attention where you can't let it go. It's like we call it going down the rabbit hole. I used to have these meetings called rabbit hole meetings. We used to have like 100 people. I think you maybe came to some experiencers where experiencers could come on. They could turn their Zoom camera off and their audio, and they could just watch, because it's like a support group that you want to hear other people telling your story. And you had that phenomena where people would talk about this, and they were just sort of like totally obsessed with it. They couldn't let it go, and then they'd go to a conference, not to go to the conference, but because there was a meeting in the morning where the experiencers all got together. They didn't care about the lectures. They just wanted to meet other people who had experiences, and they knew them. Every year they'd go back and they knew all these people and stuff, because that was your support group. So these kind of things are support groups for people who are down the rabbit hole. So we used to have this thing called the rabbit hole, where these people could all come on, and we had like one time 100 people on Zoom, and they were all talking about this sort of stuff, because they need support. If you get stuck by yourself and you're trying to figure it out in your head, people can go, like Sherry Wild, because that was her thing. She wrote a book called The Forgotten Promise, and that's what it's about. Sherry, have you forgotten the promise that you made? You agreed to this. You agreed to do this, and now it's you've got to do this. And same with Mike Clown, the guy who wrote all the owl books about owls and UFOs. Same thing. He was told just 2 days before he started the owl books, he was taken on board a ship, and they said, it's time. He said, time for what? It's time to get going. It's time for you to get moving. Do what? And then they said, you volunteered. I volunteered for what? And then they allowed him to remember, and he was just furious. You didn't tell me it was going to be like this. You didn't tell me it was going to be this depressing. You never told me it was going to be this stressful. And because he suffered from depression and stuff like that. And then 2 days later, he starts the owl books. And so he's written 3 books on owls and UFOs. Anybody, like a lot of people see owls associated with UFOs, or they see an owl on the road, like a 4-foot owl, and then he says, "You know what a 4-foot owl looks like?"
Schreiber did. He's all about owls.
Yeah. And I had like he talked about the 4 foot. So you put
in native mythology, it's about death.
Yeah, and they have the big eyes. They also have the big eyes, and so they're using that sort of a screen image or deer. And there was even Barbara Streisand's stepson is Chris Peters, and he told me. He phoned me up one time. He said, I had an owl in the bathroom. I said, you had an owl in the bathroom? Really? He said, yeah. He said, it was 5 feet tall. I said, it's 5 feet tall? Are you sure it was 5 feet? He said, it was 5 feet tall. And he said, my wife came and looked at it. She was looking at it, and then I said, we have a camera. And he goes, run and gets his camera. And of course, when he comes back, the thing's gone. But that's the one, like most people talk 4 foot. So Mike Clown takes a 4-foot owl, and he puts it on the road in the dark, and he puts the lights on the car, and you can see it's over top of the hood of the car. He says, this is what a 4-foot owl looks like. There are no 4-foot owls. And they sit in the middle of the road. Or the one girl that I interviewed.
It's the same size as a gray.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Or the one girl, I always make her tell, if you ever go on my YouTube, her name is Powers. Powers is her last name. And she talks about, I always tell her, because she was a singer. She was a country western singer. She was in Nashville. She opened for one of the big names. Then she had a car accident, had head injury, and that was the end of her career. But she was still singing in a bar. And she went, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. And I said, tell the story about the rabbit. And she said, oh, have you told that story? Some people may not have heard that story. That's a good story. Tell us a story about the rabbit. So she's talking about, I came out of the bar, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and she lived outside of the town on a farm. And then she's driving down the road, and all of a sudden there's this big giant rabbit sitting in the middle of the road. And I said, doesn't it seem weird? No. I said, move a little rabbit, move off the road, rabbit. I need to go. And the rabbit sits there, and then it moves a couple of feet, and then she drives a couple of feet, moves a couple of feet, she drives a couple of feet, and then this goes on for like, I think she said the whole thing took an hour. So she's driving down, and then finally the rabbit gets to the end of the road, and she's going to turn at the road, and the rabbit goes off the road, and she goes, oh, great, now I can go home. She goes, drives down, boom, the rabbit's in front of the car again. And then she told her boyfriend the story, and she said, I think you need to be regressed. And then she was one of Bud Hopkins' regression clients. But when Bud heard she had a positive experience, then he told her, I can't work with you anymore.
He was biased.
He was biased. But she told the story, and of course it was the light was there, and she could see her opening the door and then getting out of with these beings, and went in. She couldn't see exactly because there was so much light on top of them that was coming down for the craft, and she couldn't see. She went on the craft, and that was her experience. But it was shown as an owl.
She was dismissed because she had a positive experience?
Oh yeah, there's lots.
Why is that?
David Jacobs, same thing. Because it indicates a spiritual connection to the whole thing. That there's you're taken out of your body and all this kind of stuff, and they're given messages, positive messages about love and oneness and all this kind of stuff. And Hopkins and Jacobs both wanted to be materialists. They didn't want to be laughed at because they wanted to be cool, so they didn't want to be laughed at. So anything that indicated that you had talked to an angelic being or something like that, they would just throw it in the garbage. They wouldn't even look at it. They would just take people who claimed that they had been abducted and they had sperm taken and eggs taken and stuff like that. And they always said there's no spiritual implications, but they basically threw all the ones in the garbage. They were screening all their cases before they came in.
Yeah, so they're biased.
No, I never heard that, but I've heard eyewitness testimony about multiple giant rabbits.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, but
Yeah.
I never went. And so, Bud Hopkins would say that's God experience.
No, he didn't want that. He said if there was any sort of indication that there was a God or a spiritual
Yeah, but
thing.
he would consider a large rabbit being a god.
No, what they would say is that the beings are messing around with you. What they're trying to do is they're trying to.
Is that with owls too?
Yeah, that this is all like a game that they're doing in order to get you to play the game and give them your sperm and your eggs. That it's all a biological thing, and they really don't care about us. And even Hopkins says they don't have a very good bedside manner. I mean, if they are angelic, they don't have a good bedside manner. I mean, why don't they come and save the poor people? And they go on these arguments about why they keep taking people off the road, why they abducting people. And there's always, if you look at it, there's always going to be a reason. Like Sherry Wilde was told, you agreed to this. You agreed to tell the story, and you got to put the book out. And what you do is, because if everybody puts their book out, the consciousness rises. You don't realize it's rising, because now everybody knows what Area 51 is. Everybody knows what Skinwalker Ranch is. Everybody knows what telepathy is. 50 years ago, that wouldn't have been the case. But now, people are, and you don't realize the consciousness is actually rising, that people are starting to learn that this stuff is possible. Only 4% said that it was a bad experience. It's like the more you see UFOs, I mean, mine was very positive. I mean, it was like a circus until
you were on board.
No, well, I'm not sure.
You see, the kid never got on board anything, or
that he knows
of. That he knows of. Yes,
yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. See, mine
I'm not
was
saying he didn't.
a lot of it's got to do with the power. You have no control. It's sort of like something's there. You got no control. You can't do anything about this. It's like, what's this doing here? So we used to chase this thing. It used to go so slow. The first night it came right in front of the car, flew right in front of the car. It was right there. Second night it came right at me, and then it sort of flew back. And then I would take kids out there. I'd take tours of people out to this town that was having these sightings all the time. And
Where was this?
This is Carmen, Manitoba.
Okay.
And
where's Carmen?
It's about maybe 20 miles north of the U.S. border.
Okay.
And then we determined that 75 was the end of the Vietnam War. Mine happened right at the end of the Vietnam War.
Okay, like 1975.
Yeah, and that I was asking the guy who had the airport there. I said, Bob, why were they in Carmen? Because Carmen had 2,000 people, nothing, no industry, nothing, just a farming town, wheat and stuff. He said, I told you why they were here. I said, no, Bob, I don't know. And he said, I told you in 75 why they were here, and you just don't remember. And I said, Bob, I don't remember. I have no idea. I've been looking at this for 30 years, so I can't figure it out. He said, I told you, the nuclear missile silos. I went, oh, shit. And
I was thinking about that.
Grand Forks had all the missile silos right up to the border. And the Vietnam War was ending, and of course the Americans didn't have any troops in Southeast Asia anymore. They had to pull their troops out. So what are you going to do if they try to take the Philippines, try to take Indonesia? And the thing I figured was that the American government was thinking we may have to use the nukes, and that got picked up. And suddenly these UFOs started to appear on our side of the border. And what they'd done is, before Star Wars, they had put in the only anti-ballistic missile unit that ever went in operation. We discovered this like 30 years later. Went in operation in a town called Coolsroot, North Dakota, which is about 25 miles on the other side of the
That
border.
was a Beaumont missile?
They had all the missiles where they had 100 missiles. They had North Dakota had 300 nuclear missiles, like the Minuteman III missiles.
Right.
And then in '75, they put in February when the sighting started, they put in 100 new nuclear missiles. And this was, they were going to try to get the Russian missiles as they're coming in, so they shoot these missiles out with 5 megaton warheads and explode them in outer space and try to stop and if those missed, then they had these little sprint missiles that would shoot up over top, because you got to protect the bait, you got to protect the nuclear missiles. Forget about Los Angeles and anything. You got to protect the missiles first, because if you don't have a second encounter, you're gone. So all the missiles were being protected with these other missiles. And in November of '75, they took it out. They said it's not going to work. So they took it out, spent $6 billion on it, took it out, and then the UFOs went away. And that's why we said that's why they were there, is because of the nuclear missile silos on the other side of the border.
Who was president then, Carter?
75 was Ford. Reagan,
Ford,
Nixon had
Ford.
just gotten thrown out, and then,
Right, yeah,
and then
yeah.
Reagan was there. Or not Reagan, Ford.
Because
But
Carter had this whole experience too.
And Reagan had at least two. He had one in a plane, he talked about it openly, where he told the pilot to chase it when he was governor of California. And then the other one, there was Steve Allen, was one of the people at the party, and if you go and look up, the book's probably here.
Steve Allen, the comedian.
The comedian, and the other one was, what's her name? The comedian, female comedian.
Lucy Ball was
Lucille Ball was there, yeah. So Lucille Ball writes it in her autobiography that Reagan came in, and I heard this story through Steve Allen, through that connection, that he came in and that he was all excited. Him and Nancy came in an hour late to this cocktail party. They were coming from Sacramento into Los Angeles. They were an hour late, and they were all excited, and they'd seen this UFO, and they couldn't stop talking about it, whatever. And so Steve Allen confirmed that, and Lucille Ball confirmed that. And Lucille Ball said in her book, she says, I always wondered whether if people knew that had happened, whether he'd ever be elected as president, because nobody knew about it.
Right.
And then Shirley MacLaine comes along, and Shirley MacLaine in a British magazine says she talked to Lucille Ball, and Lucille Ball said it wasn't a sighting, it was an actual encounter. The thing landed, the beings came out, and they told Ronald Reagan to run for president. Wow. And so then I went to her Shirley MacLaine's webmaster, and I said, there's a story about Shirley in the London paper here. Is this true, or are they just making up a story about Shirley? And then about a week later comes back and says, no, that's a true story. That's what Lucille Ball told Shirley MacLaine. So you get these things where it's these encounters where you may not even know. So we had the positive experiences in '75, and in '76, these balls like you had, they were about this big, were on the road. And the first time I saw them, we were trying to film the big ones. I would bring people out that have cameras. Oh, I can film this thing, and then because at that time.
When you were out there doing this, were you frightened?
No.
No.
Until this night. So in '75 there was no. We were chasing the thing. We were chasing down the road. And one time I drove right off the end of the road because they would move the road. They were like straight roads, and then every 8th mile they'd move it because the world is round. They'd move it 8, and I drove right off the end of the road. We chased these things. It was a great thing. And then in '75 these orbs started to appear on the ground, and we called them monitors. We were monitors and ground lights because nobody knew the word orb. They didn't exist in '75, so we called them ground lights. And the first night I got within range, it had kept moving down this road, and we kept moving. We kept staying in the same distance from the car. And as we went down, and we got 8.25 miles down the road, and there was a bridge. So in Manitoba in April, this is the beginning of April, all the snow melts and the fields are completely flat. It's the flattest area in the world. So you can have this much water, but it looks like a lake. And you're driving through this road, and it's just this huge lake all around you. There's fields that maybe only have that much water, and then have these drainage ditches that would drain the water off from the fields. So there's this bridge over where the drainage ditch was, and this thing was up on the bridge. And I said to my friend Jim, I said, Jim, look, now we can actually see it sit on the bridge. Come on, let's go. We drove up on the bridge, and the thing was gone. We're looking north and south. We're coming from the north, going towards the U.S. border. We got on the bridge, and we're looking around, and I said, it's got to be under the bridge. And if you know this story about the boogosphere that's talking about now, that's what at that time there was what's called a Bates ball that was recovered. National Enquirer had $1 million reward for anybody who could prove extraterrestrial life. So these people found this Bates ball that had no seams in it, and it would roll around on the TV. It would move around on its own TV and stuff. So they took it in for the $1 million reward. And so when we saw this, it's got to be one of them balls. It's got to be one of those steel balls. It's got to be under the bridge here somewhere. But the water was so high in the bridge, we really couldn't look underneath. So we drove down on the south end off this bridge, And it's just a small wooden bridge, maybe this width of this room. Drove off, and then I looked back and said, Jim, it's behind us now. It's on the bridge. It's on the bridge again. It must have come up through the water. So we went back on the bridge, and it was gone again. So then we go. Now we're going north. We head back where we were coming from, towards the main highway, and we get about a quarter mile away. And I look behind and say, Jim, it's back on the bridge again. Let's go. And I had an 8mm movie camera, and we had binoculars. So we got out of the car and we started to walk, and I knew this thing was going to take off. So I took 7 steps. 3 seconds of 8mm film. 7 steps, 3 seconds of film. 7 steps, 3 seconds of film. 7 steps, 3 seconds of film. And suddenly I'm at the bottom of the bridge, and this thing's right there. It's like I can see it. And the weird thing, I asked you about what the light looked like, but what happened was there was wooden railings alongside the bridge, and I can still remember this to this day, like it happened yesterday. I was sitting there and I'm going, that's weird. Look at that light. That is weird. Because it was bright as could be. It's just horribly bright. And yet it was. I looked at the bridge, and it was just sort of lighting up the side of the bridge, just a glow on the side of the bridge. I'm going, she would lighten up this whole damn countryside. We called it a contained light. It was like you put a light inside a bag, and it sort of glows outside the bag. What's that?
How could you share this story?
I've told the story. Yeah. And so the best part of the story is coming. But so we're on the bridge, and now we're determined. So we're trying to look under the bridge and stuff like this, and we just couldn't. And then, so what are you going to do? So okay, so we walk back down. No, it was at the bridge. So I got to the bottom of the bridge, and I said, I had the camera, and I said, Jim, hold the camera. I'm going to jump on it. And I was going to bring the piece. I've actually got a piece from the famous case at Falcon Lake, Manitoba, where the guy gets burned. You know the story in '67, the guy gets burned. I was going to bring a piece of the rock where this thing was actually sitting. But anyway, so I knew you could get burned. This guy got very badly burned. He was touching the craft, and then the craft started to take off, and this vent came around and started his shirt on fire, and he had this checkerboard marks on his chest that would go away, and then he'd come back 2 years later, and then they'd go away, and they'd come back. And it was this weird theory of wow thing, but they just do this weird stuff where they want everybody to wonder what's going on here. How come this guy get burned? How come his burns are coming back and stuff? So I knew I could get burned, but I said, Jim, I'm going to jump on this thing. I was like Peter in the Bible. It was like, unless I touch the wounds, and I'm not going to believe. But it was right there, and I said, I'm going to touch it. By the time it gets moving, I'm going to go and I'm going to jump and I'm going to hit it. I want to touch it. And so then he says, well, hang on. He says, I think there's one sitting on top of the car. And we'd come down there, and they were all around us, and they were sitting above the water, and they were orange, like oranges, and they were sitting above the water. It looked like 2 of them sitting there, and then I realized, no, it's not. It's reflecting off the water, and they were all around us. It was so weird. We're in the middle of nowhere. This is on an abandoned road. There's nothing around us. We're sort of looking around, and it's all dark, and there's all these orange lights around us. It's like, wow, it's just kind of weird. And then so we got there, and then he said, look, there's one on top of the car. And so then instead of giving him a camera, I turned around and I looked. And it was like, remember, we're looking into the north along this road. The car is sitting there, and it's like an orange half sphere on there, and the orange smoke hanging down the side of the car. It looked like the sun coming up in the north. It's like rising in the north. And I go, it's sitting on top of the car. I start running. I took about 3 steps. I go, oh shit. Behind me, sure enough, something's gone at the bridge. So I figured, well, now we're committed. So we run to the car, and it was like, what are you going to do? So I put my hand on top of the car and said, I didn't know what the hell to do. He told me later, he was looking for the keys to the car. And so then we get back in the car again, and we're just like floored by, holy cow, I guess it'd gone in the water, and these things, orange things are still all around us. And I looked back at the bridge and said, Jim, it's back at the bridge. Come on, let's go. Let's do it again. I want to get close. He said, no, I want to go home. I said, come on, we're ready. Come on, I got close. I want to jump on it. We're close. And I know what to do now. And he said, no, I'm going to go. And it was his car. So we go home. 20 years later, 20 or 30 years later, I meet him at the main library in Winnipeg. He's coming out, and now he's the press officer, head of press releases for Manitoba Hydro, $1 billion corporation. Now he's Mr. Cool. So he comes out and he says, hey, how you doing? He was my best man at my wedding. And I said, how you doing? I said, oh, great. He said, what are you up to? And I said, I'm just getting some books out of the library. He said, hey, you still into that UFO stuff? I said, yeah, I'm still in it. And he said, you always were the gullible kind. And I went, fuck you, buddy. I'm so scared. I don't want to go back. And he back. I couldn't believe, because if you haven't seen anything, I don't care. I mean, you don't believe, disbelieve. But he was there. He was so scared he wouldn't go back. And then he was telling me I'm gullible. And I was just so furious, and he just backed away, and he just sort of walked away. I was just like, I've never been that mad in my life, like this
Sold
idiot.
out.
Yeah, he's just, but now he was a big press guy for Manitoba Hydro, and he was Mr. Cool now.
Let's keep his job.
So these orb things we saw, we didn't even, and I remember I went to the government, there was a government guy, the Canadian government had our secret program from 50 to 54, and the guy who was the metallurgist, the guy who was doing the metal analysis, the Americans were sending stuff up into Canada, and they were analyzing this metal. And this guy was the youngest guy in the whole group, and he was living in Morden, Manitoba. Ottawa was where the thing was, but he was in Morden now, and he was a manager for a credit union, and then he didn't want to talk to me, and then the guy who ran the program, his wife, I talked to her before she died. She was a widow, and she told me everything that was going on, what they were doing, landing UFOs and all this kind of stuff. And she says to me, well, Art's going to talk to you. And I said, well, he doesn't want to talk to you. He'll talk to you, don't worry, he's going to talk to you. And he said, if it hadn't been for Merle Smith, he said, I wouldn't talk to you. He said, but she said, this ruined my life, it ruined my career, I never should have gotten into this. And he starts talking, I said, hey, we got these lights there, we call them these ground lights, and they're on the roads, and you can flash lights at them, and they'll flash back, and stuff like that. And then he's going, oh, you mean monitors? And I go, yeah, monitors. And he said, we had this back in Ottawa. And I didn't even know what he was talking about, but I didn't want to play stupid. He said, we had this back in Ottawa all the time. And then I went and checked the records, and sure enough, they were talking about these things sitting in the ditches outside, and they would sit on the windows as they were having UFO meetings, they'd sit on the windows and stuff like that. It was just the most bizarre thing that these things, you look back and they go all the way back. But then you said, was I on board the ship? So I'm taking these kids out, and they were in, I remember the one kid's actually died now, and they were about 14 years old. And I was taking them out, and everybody wanted to come. I was like, "You going out for UFOs? Can I come?" And all these kids who wanted to see this stuff, And we go, and everybody would come with their cameras with 2,500 millimeter telephoto lenses, trying to photograph all this stuff. And we'd take infrared film, and we'd flash lights at it, and using infrared film, and we'd flash back and stuff. So we were there the one night, and I'm going down this other road, and I was like, "Oh, hey, there's some ground lights. Come on, I'll show you." And these kids, I guess they'd never seen me before. I said, "Come on, I'll show you." So there was a kid in the front, worked for the mayor of Winnipeg, and he didn't get out. There's 3 kids in the back, 2 brothers. And I took the oldest brother. I said, "Brian, come on, I'll show you how this weird thing. Watch." So I take them out, and there's no road anymore. The road gets worse, and then suddenly there's no road anymore. So they're sort of on this part where if you had a truck, you could drive down, but it wouldn't take my car. So it's sitting there, and I said, "Watch this." I go, flash, and it goes, beep, beep, beep. And I go side to side, and it goes like a leaf. Beep, beep, beep. I'm running across the road, and the kid's looking, "Hey, that's so cool." And then I take the light, and I put the light up, and it goes up, and it goes back down again. And then I go, "Okay, let's get your brother out here." So I get his younger brother out there, Glenn's him. And I said, "Glenn, come and look at this." And I was sitting there, and I flashed it 3 times, beep, and it goes, like a whistling, beeping noise. What the hell is going on here? I said, "Oh my goodness, I gotta piss this thing off. Now the big one's gonna come." And I look up, and on the American border is this arc welding light, and I go, instant fear. No words to describe the fear. Unbelievable. It's like suddenly it's running the show. Now they're chasing us, and it's like, oh no, you better get back in the car. So we go back to the car, and I remember I'm sitting there, and I'm going, I got 4 kids that are about 14, 15 years old in the car. We could get abducted here, and this is when Travis Walton was abducted. Just before that, in November of the year before. So we sort of knew about abductions, although there hadn't really been any. And so I said, "Oh my God, these kids ain't coming home, and I'm responsible for these kids, and I messed this whole thing up, and I shouldn't have done this." And it's like, I'm sitting there, and I don't know what to do. And yet I'm watching this thing out of the side of my eye. And it's going, this arc welding light, it's going along the American border. And I'm going, don't turn. It starts to turn. I go, "Oh no, don't turn. It comes across to the end of the road. No, don't turn." It goes, it starts coming down the road. And I'm going, oh my God, it's coming right at us. I said, "We're getting abducted for sure." It's coming. And it just started as an arc welding light, but when it turned down the road, suddenly it's a triangle. It's 2 huge red lights and a green light on the back, and people often describe the triangle as flying with the back end forward. They're not the point, it's the back end flying towards you. And it's coming towards you with these 2 red lights on it. And I'm going, oh my God, it's coming closer and closer and closer. It's coming. And then I remember I said to the kids, well, what am I going to do? So I said, "Somebody give me my binoculars." I take the binoculars, and my hands are shaking, and I'm holding against the inside of the glass on the car because my hands are shaking. And I'm looking up at this thing, the entire field of vision. That's all you could see. So I don't know, it was like either a big object very close, or it was a very a small object, or a small object was closer, a big object was up high. And to me, it looked like the lights were maybe 5 feet across, these lights. And I'm just guessing, there was nothing in between the lights. So then we're sitting there, and it's sitting there right above the car, just like that. I'm looking straight up at it, and these kids in the back seat, they're just screaming and yelling, ah, yeah. They're all excited, and I'm just like panicking, just like terrible. And then all of a sudden, as you asked, were you abducted? If I was ever abducted, this is the moment I was abducted, because it was sitting there, and it just went like this. Almost like you take a film, you put the film together, you cut the film, and you put the film back together, and it's a jerk, just a jerk. That's all it was. It was just a jerk like that. Boom, fear was gone, absolutely gone.
You could have had missing time.
No fear whatsoever. So I don't know what happened at that period, because people say, but we didn't know anything about missing time. Missing time didn't come until '83. They wrote the book about missing time.
But did you notice when you got home the time?
No, we didn't, because you never thought about it.
Wow.
The missing time concept didn't come until 1980s.
Yeah.
This is the 70s. So nobody knew about missing time and abductions and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So we were sitting there, and this thing jerked, and it started flying towards this microwave tower at a town over there. And again, we're in the middle of nowhere, and all of a sudden, there, these lights are flashing behind me. I go, holy shit! And I look, and it's a Rourke amount of police. I go, oh, thank you, Jesus. I said, hey, watch this! I'm going to get this guy, because when I had this thing where I was going to jump on it. It had been picked up in a local newspaper at the place. It was all over the place. This guy who's going to jump on this UFO. So I guess this RCMP guy knew, because what had happened was at the main town, Carmen, the National Enquirer went and interviewed two of the guys, the RCMP guys, and they said, yeah, we saw it. It looked like it had a red X on it, or a black X on it. And boom, those guys were transferred out 2 days later. And who knows, you could get transferred to the Arctic or whatever. They're transferred out of town immediately. And so I think they all knew to keep quiet about it, don't talk about it. So I said, watch, I'm going to get this guy. So I rolled down the window, and the guy comes with his flashlight, and he says, oh, guys, what's going on here? Because we're in the middle of nowhere, and the car lights are off or whatever. His car's just sitting there. And I said, see that light? See that object there? And it's still clear as day. It's triangles flying away. And he goes, I see it. I said, well, we're just watching these lights down at the end of the road. He said, what do you mean? And I said, well, turn your car lights off, and I'll show you. This guy, the RCP guy, goes back. He's by himself. Turns the car lights off, and these kids are all excited. They're all bouncing around. They know what's coming in. And then as I go, and I take the flashlight, and I look, and there's nothing. Just black as can be. Oh, no. So I take the flashlight, I put the flashlight up, and this subject comes back down. I take the flashlight from side to side. It's going like this, and this guy's. He's looking, and then I think flash it 3 times, and it flashes 3 times, and he goes, it's just probably a couple guys down at the end of the road having a beer. And I said, well, we've been actually chasing him for 6 miles now. He goes, I guess I'll see you guys. And he goes, and he starts walking towards his car, and I said to the kids, get his license plate number, and they start running, and he's running. He jumps in the car, the gravel's flying off, he goes, and these 3 kids are running with his flashlights running up this road, getting him out of a police car down the road. And we got his number. We knew exactly which detachment he'd come from. I could have gone and ruined his career, and I said, nah, leave the guy alone. It was the weirdest. So that was the time we may have been abducted. Something may have happened, because I did have a lot of, and then I didn't have any experiences after that. After 76, I had the one with she died 10 years ago. If you remember the Stevensville, Texas story.
2008?
2008. So I was with the reporter, and we were going to write a book on presidents and UFOs, because that was how I started. I was an expert on the presidents and who had seen UFOs and stuff. So we were going to do a book on that. And so I went to her place in Texas, and we were sitting there in the house, and all of a sudden her husband comes home. He worked at the university, comes home, and he goes, come on outside, there's a UFO outside, come on, there's a UFO outside. I go outside. I don't even remember what it looked like. I mean, it was the middle of the afternoon, because it was about 4 o'clock when he came home, and this thing was up there, and I'm looking at it, and I go, that is weird. And it was an object, but I don't remember if it was a structure, and she died, he died, both of COVID. And otherwise I would have definitely gone back and said, to them, like, what did that thing look like? I don't remember. So we're sitting there, we're looking at this thing, and it was just flying along it's heading towards Dallas. It's just flying along, and I go, wow, that's cool. It was no big thing like, message or anything. It was just like, that is kind of weird. That is not a plane. That is nothing. I was looking at it. All of a sudden, it's sort of out of view, and all of a sudden, jet racing along. I go, hey, there's a jet after. And I didn't realize it was a jet. And then, but a minute later, second jet, the same direction going after it. And then it was years later when people were telling the story, I said, hey, I had that experience too, the jet chasing the thing. And it's like, and at that time, I didn't even think it was significant.
Yeah.
It was just like, it was just this weird thing where, because yours was at a low level, which would have been hard for them to pick it up on radar, because ours, they couldn't pick up Carmen on radar, because it had to be above 1,000 feet. The radar goes out, so if it's over the ground, if it's on the ground, they're not going to see it. It has to be so many feet in the air before radar can pick this thing up and track it. And we did have one from Cologne, did I tell you that story? We had one from the air base here. And it's on my website, it's on my YouTube site, where I interviewed the guy. He's a NORAD guy, and he's dead now. This is 1959. And he talks about, he comes to work at NORAD and at the base, Comox, and he's there, and the guy said, well, just to let you know on your shift, he said, there's a UFO at the end of the runway. And he goes, there is? And it's like, he looks on, yeah, there's a UFO sitting on the end hovering above the end of the runway. And he said, good luck. And he goes home. And so he's sitting there, and he says, and he scrambles the jets to chase this thing. And he said, he's watching the screen, the jets are coming in, and as soon as the jets come onto the screen, he said, the UFO moved 50 miles instantaneously out into the Pacific, instantaneously. And then he said that was it. He wrote up the report, and they came and told him next day. Now, the media is going to want to know about this, but we're not going to remember anything, are we? And he goes, no, sir. And so it never got announced that this happened, but he told me this story later, and he had actually seen the UFO, and he was in a prison camp in World War II, in a German prison camp, and they all saw an object, but at that time, the objects they were seeing, it was a rocket that was flying across, and they thought it was like the German rockets, and it was red, and it was flying across. And that's the thing I always remind people is, if you look at 1896, you have wooden ships with propellers and lights on them, and then you have in World War II, you have, before World War II, you have these rockets that are flying, and in Sweden, they're still landing, and they all land in swamps. And they all go land, and Sweden's people are always trying to get them. They've got almost every year, they've had one since 1946. And then you have the Adamski crafts that come in, they have the balls under them. Then you have the ones with the windows in them, and then the windows disappear, and then you have landing traces where they land and burn out the grass. That hasn't happened for 30 years. That hasn't happened. They do this, then they do this, then they do this, then they 82 they start crop circles. Last year there was only 12 crop circles in England. The year before there was only 10. It's like, okay, we're finished with crop circles, let's do something else now. Let's bring out orbs. Now orbs is the big thing. Everybody's seeing orbs and stuff like that. And it's almost like the phenomena, that's why they're playing this sort of game that you're never going to figure it out. Same as you're never going to figure out ghosts. You're never going to figure out telepathy. You're not going to figure out any of the paranormal phenomena, because to me it's all the same thing, and it's what it's trying to do is trying to raise your consciousness to understand that it's not the physical world you think it is. Like there are dead people in there, or there's dead people on board the ship. So it's repeatedly talked about dead people. When you get on the ship, your dead husband's on there or something like that. And you're going, like the one woman said, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. He had a thing on his back. Let's see. And they pull up your shirt. And she goes, oh my gosh! And you're just playing with me. You're just playing it. And people are usually very upset when they have a dead relative on there. So the question is, are they taking dead people, sort of recreating them, bringing them into the physical world, or are they taking you in an abduction experience up into the world where the dead people live? Yeah, are the aliens and the dead people all living in this sort of higher realm? Because what you'll see in a lot of UFO experiences, where you always have trauma involved, where they scare you or whatever, and that's I think it's part of the deal. So they come. Do you have any experience of the beings in your room? No. So people have this experience where they come and they wake up and the being is there, and it's like, why did they do that? Why do the aliens do that? Why do they come in and go, hey, Brian, beep, 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 wake up, wake up, wake up. Look, I'm going to go look at an alien. And because then the person dissociates. They go, oh my God. And as soon as you dissociate, they can grab you. They can grab your astral body, because that's what dissociates. It shuts. That's the ego thing. If you shut down your ego, if you surrender, then they can grab you. Then they can get you. And that's especially in the psychedelics, where the rule is, when I wrote my psychedelics book, it said, surrender is the rule. Believe me, surrender is the only rule. If you don't surrender, if you fight it, you're in big trouble, whether it's aliens or whatever it is. You had the people with Skinwalker Ranch where they said, oh, they followed them home, the hitchhiker and stuff. And I said, oh, well, can you tell me those 3 guys that did that, these military guys, were they carrying guns? And they go, well, yeah, they were special forces guys. They're all these tough special forces guys. They all had guns, yeah. And I said, well, good luck. You reap what you sow. That there's this reflective quality. into what you see, and that people don't see the same thing. We had the Mission Rama thing, where they open a portal, and the beings come down into this portal, and there's 7 people go into the portal, and they're engaging with this being. And the being is talking to 7 people at the same time. Everybody's getting a different message from this being. He's just standing there. And so I interviewed these people. What did you see? It was 10-foot tall guy.
So what is the message?
Well, each one got different messages. The main one that they wanted to impress was Paula Harris, who is if you work, we will help you, something like that. Like she had a role to do. If you work, we will help you. And but she couldn't really hear him when it was going on because she's freaking out. She was just freaking out. And then the guy who was running the thing, who's sort of the guy who's in contact with this being all the time, said, Paula, quieten down. He can't talk to you. He can't talk to you when you're doing that. And so then that was 2014. 2015, they opened up another one, and this Paula Harris is in there again, but this time she's got a translator, and this guy is a 24-year Navy vet who's an architect in Los Angeles who can translate. So he's her translator, and he's not supposed to be in there. They're all supposed to have 7 people in the Zendra. He goes in with her, and then I'm interviewing the people. What you see? Oh, this 7'10" tall guy. He looked like Michael Phelps, the swimmer. He was all very muscular built. He looked very stern. He had the hair like the Mission Rama people, as I pointed out when we talked the other day. The Mission Rama people, they're very religious. They're Roman Catholics, they're Latino people, and it's a very religious experience. They try to ohm and meditate and stuff like that to encounter the beings and stuff like that. You will never, ever, I defy anybody. They've got 25,000 people that have these experiences all over the world, all the time. Nobody ever has seen a gray, nobody's ever seen a reptilian, and nobody's ever seen a mantid, which means that what are theirs? They're guys that came out of the Bible. They're all muscular, they got the hair hanging down, they got the robe on, they live under the mountain, they look like Jesus, you know. I mean, they all look the same. They got beautiful sort of beings, and that's the thing, is you're reflective. So when this guy came in, I was interviewing all the second people, and it was mostly the same people as the year before. And then this guy comes along, and I said to him, hey, so you were inside the thing? He said, Grant, you can't believe it. There's extraterrestrials. I saw him. I was right there. I can't believe it. I'd never seen anything in my life, and this extraterrestrial was standing there. He was just freaking out. And I said, hey, so he's a hologram? And he goes, what do you mean, hologram? I said, well, 2014, they all said he was solid. In 2015, they all said he was floating in the air and you could see the trees through. It wasn't a hologram. I said, well, that's what they said. They said,
and they're
look.
trying to tell us what?
Well, they're trying to tell you that it's not the thing you think it is. It's not the physical world. So they appear as one thing, then they appear as a hologram, which means it's the same being, but he can come as whatever they want. He even told, there's an Israeli experience who said, they told him, when we come into your world, we take on a body to work in your world. We don't need a body. You can do the same thing, you just don't know it. So they can come in and appear as whatever they want to appear as, like an owl, as whatever they want to appear as.
So it's for us to, the idea is to let go of the matrix, is that what we're
Yeah,
talking?
they're gradually getting us to the point where everybody's going to believe, yeah, they're here and they're able to shape shift, and consciousness is part of this thing. Like I wrote a book on people who've flown the craft, 36 people. I'll say the same thing. You touch part of the craft is alive, and Fox News now I gave them a briefing. Fox News may do a story on this fact that there's a consciousness interface with the UFOs.
We want to suspend disbelief so we can see things for the way they really are.
Well, I don't think you're ever going to see things the way they really are. You're always going to be looking through a matrix. It's like Hoffman says.
I would agree with that. We just have so many limitations to our perception.
Yeah.
So they're trying to get us to open up to perceiving the world differently from what we're programmed to perceive.
And that's why they do the weird things,
Which is
because
a matrix in my mind.
yeah. So they do the weird stuff because I said to Linda Howe.
Snap us out of the matrix somehow.
Yeah, we'll gradually move you out. It's the old idea that they're doing it a little step at a time. And people are, as I said, people now know these different things. Like Linda Howe, I said to Linda Howe about cattle mutilations. She was the expert on cattle mutilations. I said, Linda, you know why they take every single last drop of blood out of the cow? She goes, no, why? I said, because if they didn't, you wouldn't investigate it. And she was like, and I said, yeah, it's just weird. They take half the face off, they do all this sort of stuff, and everybody goes, holy cow, where's my camera? Everybody's taking pictures. That's what they want. And then when you start to research cattle mutilations, you suddenly realize all of them are downwind and downstream from nuclear power activities. All of them. They're all on the west side, the east side of the Rockies. There's none on the west side of the Rockies. And you have this situation where they're all happening in Christian countries. There's no calculations outside of Christian countries. And Brahmin cows, the sacred Brahmin cow, there's millions of them in the United States that come from India. Not one single Brahmin cow was ever mutilated. And you start realizing these things as you go along, and you go, hey, and that's what I say with the UFO thing. The more you look at it, the weirder it gets, the more strings you start to pull out. You say, I didn't know that, I didn't know that. And that's what they're doing, is they're gradually, but they do it the weird thing, because unless there's, even Einstein said, mystery is at the bottom of all science and art. Unless there's awe and curiosity, unless you're like your situation where you're trying to figure this thing out, you're never going to do anything.
Open up to the mystery. And
Yeah, it just drives you to try to figure this thing out.
So where are we going? What is raising up consciousness? Like what is the
Things
goal
like
that
this.
we're trying to get to?
Things like this, just meetings, people talking about it, and it's like the old idea, as long you don't care what they write about you as long as you spell your name right. It's like this idea where consciousness will rise, that people, like you take the United States, the example I use, you take the United States in 2015, take a look at the United States in 2025 and tell me it's the same country. Completely, not even close to the same country as it was. And all it was somebody told a story, that person repeated the story, it went on Twitter, and all these stories got repeated, and all the conspiracy stuff, and next thing you know, the whole thing shifted.
The control net is tightening, yes?
The control
Net,
of,
control structure, the totalitarian thing that's beginning to sort of getting.
and that's a reflective thing, that until you see the darkness, you don't know what's in the light, that we're going to make a decision based upon, when it gets dark enough, we're going to make a decision what is right to do, that this is part of the
It has
process.
to do with belief, yes?
It's all belief.
Yeah.
People think it's not belief, but the people who are rational, analytical, or who are like discussions, that's left brain. The people who have had the experience are the ones that know. It's called a knowing. When I had my experience in 2013, when they told me this got, because I was wondering, it's 2075, it was flying along, and I said, what's it doing? It's not doing anything. Like, I couldn't figure out what's it doing. It's just flying along. And so the thing was, when I got the message, it said, you wanted to know in 1975 what the answer was? The answer is not presidents, not sightings, it's consciousness. I went, and I said, I couldn't have spelled consciousness in 2012, and I couldn't care less. But I was like, I knew this was the answer. It wasn't an idea, it was the answer. Or if you take a guy by the name of, he runs a lab at Stanford University who does all the analysis of the metals, UFO metals. He's a very famous guy. He's got a Gary Nolan. Gary Nolan talks about it. I said, Gary, can I quote you? And he said, yeah. And he said, I don't know how it works, he says, but I know how to make it work. I don't know if there's little L's in my head or what's going on. He said, well, what you do is you work through the process as much as you can. You work it, all the angles, whatever, and then you let it go. Stop it, let it go, put it on a piece of paper beside the bed. And he said, the next morning or within a couple of days, the answer, not an answer, the answer is in my head. He said, and he said, I can do it all the time. And
answer is?
Well, whatever he's working on, a problem. So if you've got a problem, that's this idea of inspiration. So the answers are all in the field. And that's why I'm so interested in trance channelers, because trance channelers can shut down that left brain, which is causing the noise in the signal, and they could pick up the signal, they can go into the field, grab the material and bring it down. Same as Tesla said. He could get the invention, he could work on it in the field before he'd actually bring it in, and he had the alternating engine, which he described. He was walking through a park in Budapest with his friend, and all of a sudden the idea for the alternating engine just popped in his head, and he drew it on in the dirt for this guy. He said, look at this. And then he left it there and he worked on it, and then he said that's where all his inventions came from. There's a guy at NASA who I talked to who's
the idea of channeling.
Yeah, or intuition. We're like song guys. Like you ask them, where does your song come from? And they go, I don't know, it just comes. I just sit there and wait and it comes. And that's how it works.
I'm a creative person, so I'm very familiar with
Yeah.
the process of things coming to me.
Yeah. And that's why I'm so interested in the channeling people and the people who've had the experience, because the phenomena seems to be picking certain people. And a lot of people who've had experiences, you can ask them, did anything change? They go, oh yeah, I started becoming psychic. I can heal people now. I've had 50% of people who've claimed that they've had encounters with non-human intelligence say they can heal people. Like, what's the chance of that? 50% of them say they've been healed. Somebody in their family or them have been healed by this phenomenon. Or 37% say they've had a near-death experience. And you go, what's the chances, if it's all random, what's the chances that you randomly saw a UFO and then you had a near-death experience? Most of the people I've talked to have had 2 near-death experiences. So is this a random experience, or are they picking people and these people suddenly become psychic and they suddenly be able to heal people? Like Ray Hernandez, who did the poll, said, if I had $1 for every person that told me they did Reiki healing, he said I'd be a millionaire. He said, like, everybody that's had experiences is doing Reiki healing. Or you take a look at all the creative people, mediums and stuff like that. You go to mediums. There was a study done in Brazil, and you look at them, and I think it was only 2 that did. 16 out of 18 had childhood abuse issues, and that's the thing. They dissociate. They don't want. They're being whatever's happening to them, and they cut up themselves off in the world. And all of a sudden, yeah, there's my dead grandmother. I'm talking to the dead grandmother because they're able to shut that left brain, the rational analytical brain, that when you're being hypnotized, what the person says to you is they're talking to your left brain. They say, okay, count your breaths. And the left brain says, oh, I'm good at that. I'm the best breath counter that ever lived, man. And then after about 4 breaths, I'm tired of doing this. Oh, I don't want to do this anymore. And then they say, count your breaths. They keep going back again. And suddenly the left brain says, okay, I'm out of here, and surrenders. He says, enough of this nonsense. And suddenly the person is hypnotized. Or, this kind of thing. That it's always the same thing. It's this rational analytical mind that is running the world today that's causing all the trouble. And then this intuitive thing that's coming down. So I'm always interested if people are getting messages, and the messages are usually the same. Yeah, or like AA, you surrender to something bigger than yourself.
Yes.
And until you surrender, it's not going to happen. Okay, he wanted to go to this side of the room, so let's do some.
Ladies, have any experiences you wanted to share?
No, not too much. I just grew up with a lot of talk with my house.
A lot of what?
A lot of talk about ufology and all that stuff in my house. Especially
And-
my dad was like in the military. I'm from Chile actually originally.
Oh, yeah,
So there's
okay.
a lot of astronomy stuff there, as you guys probably know.
Yeah.
So it's big for that. So since I was a child, I was always kind of like very fascinated by the topic and everything like that. And I never thought it was like, I don't know, I always had this kind of like inclination that it was probably true when you get older and you start listening to Coast to Coast. I was a huge Coast to Coast person. So that's, that became like, listening to the shadow people, all that stuff that we were talking about here. So a lot of stories there and stuff, and I just kind of developed it. Whether or not I saw something, I think maybe I did at one point when we were on a bus going down to northern Chile, and there was a bit of a light that kind of was like just
Were you living
lingering, and then it just kind of went. So, and I've never seen something like that before, and I was like, okay, whatever. I wasn't scared or any of the other stuff, but I'm the kind of person that I believe in spirits. I believe that there is like that we can have a reach into another world. We just don't try hard enough, and it doesn't scare me. Ghosts don't scare me, all of that stuff. Just it doesn't, right? So my dad used to say, "Get scared of the living."
Any other
They're a little
experiences
more
as
scared.
a child?
That's it. That's
Poltergeist?
it.
No poltergeist in the house? or
Nothing
anything
like that. There was my mom's. Apparently, we lived in a haunted house as well. Yeah, she woke up and she heard something in the kitchen, or her silverware was on the floor. And this is really interesting. So I was back in South America. Both of my parents passed. So I was back recently. I was just doing some legal stuff there. So I stayed at the house that I grew up in, and I'd always find something on the floor, like something that I threw in the garbage was back on the floor.
I wrote a book about that stuff.
So it's like,
That's at Ports. At Ports and Manifestations.
and it's interesting because I'm like, is this my mom, right? So as soon as like, Mom, don't worry, just relax, kind of thing, like stop. So it's weird. It's almost like I had this inclination that she was around, like watching me or something like that. Or there's something watching me there. And as soon as I said, you know what, you need to rest, kind of thing, like just relax. It didn't happen anymore. I felt that, but I wasn't scared. Again, I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, So little things like that. I don't, because I think a lot of people do get so scared from it, and I always think, well, but why? I believe most animals, I don't know, I mean, I think a lot of animals can see into another world.
Yeah.
I do believe that, why not us?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's me in a nutshell. So.
Any dimes? Because I did a book on Ports Manifestation. I'd say to people they have sightings, and then I'd say, anything else weird happen in your house? You ever have anything fly around in the house? can I come back? I got some stuff. They come back with a whole tray full of stuff that's wandering around the house and stuff. Like dimes is a big one with mothers. There's a lot of people who get dimes. And then you always say, heads up or heads down. They say, heads up. There was one investigation they did at a haunted factory.
Right.
64 coins in one weekend
Yeah.
fell, all heads up. What's the chances of that?
That's interesting, because I always call heads up, and it's like we always
Yeah.
say.
So you find a dime, you always look heads up. If it's tails up, then you leave it on the floor. If it's heads up, then the theory is it's always, especially your mother. I heard lots of people tell me, oh, they get, one guy had a whole collection, he had a jar like this, whole collection of dimes. I said, oh, I know what that's about.
Yeah.
He thought it was going to be something new I'd never heard before.
Yeah.
Dimes.
Well, this was,
Or
this is
airports.
back in South America. I don't know too much about my apartment.
Yeah.
I kind of look at my cat sometimes, and I laugh because I know he can see it. I believe that they can see
Yeah.
things that we can't.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Anybody else?
What's your name?
I wrote 2 books on Mission Rama, which is the Peru, group from Peru and Brazil and stuff like that. And I remember
Yeah.
2 of the main leaders, I said to them, they were talking about meditation. I said, so when did you start meditating? They went, "Oh, about 14. I go, nobody in Canada meditates when they're 14 a boy. No, not a chance.
I
It was
did.
like, that's what I said, the
I was
difference.
14 when I started.
Started meditating? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. See, that was just, it's unheard of in Canada where you can sort of, yeah, that's why I say you got to realize this is the biggest story ever, and that we got to play it. I mean, I just took a photograph. I walked to Tim Hortons, and there was a guy sleeping on the street, and of course I always have to think, it's Vancouver, it's like $3 million for a house or whatever. This guy's sleeping on the street, and so that's I always say to people, we got to live this life with all this interesting stuff. We may be on the street or in Calcutta in a junkyard looking for something to eat, and stuff like that. Next life, we better enjoy it. We got this unbelievable opportunity to see this reality type thing going on here that we should be grateful that we got to have these experiences. Ending for the because I had the conversation with, I don't know if you know the story, the key guys is Lou Elizondo and Mellon, who were 2 of the guys in there. So I had a meeting with them, and what we had is we discovered that there's 10 Canadian MPs who were going to come forward that were going to say they were interested in UFOs and they'd like some sort of answers. So I said, well, these guys don't know anything. I want to put a panel together. So I was going to put a panel with Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon, Gary Nolan, and Avi Loeb from Harvard. And these would be the experts. And these 10 MPs would come and go on a Zoom conference. The 10 MPs would say, oh, I want to know about this. And these experts would answer their questions. So we were talking, and they said, oh, it's a good idea. Yeah, we'll go on the panel. We'll do this sort of thing. And then we had the second meeting, and they didn't like the guy that we had for the host, because I said I didn't want to be involved. I just have some guy host it for me. And then so okay, we changed that. And then we were discussing, and they said, oh, you need to get some there was 2 members of parliament, their aides, who were on the Zoom conference. So Mellon said, well, we need you to pick up some military witnesses, and then you go in front of the committees, and the committees will give you money to research and stuff like that. So you don't understand how Canadian politics works. It's all run by the government. The committees are all run by the government. So they don't have any ability to spend money and stuff like that. And the Canadians are going to do an investigation, but they want it to be a scientific investigation. And they said, well, no, you got to do this military thing. You got to follow our lead and do this sort of stuff. And I said, no, but we're Canadians. We're not into military. We're not into who's got the biggest gun and stuff like that. I said they want a Canadian investigation. And Chris Mellon, I swear to you, this is what he said. We got on tape. He said, that's the poison pill. I'm gone. And they walked away. They said, that's it. If you're not going to, they said, we're not going to tell you what to do, but if you don't do what we tell you you're going to do, we're gone. And they walked away. And that was the whole thing. We didn't want to do the scare, the living daylights to everybody, because it's like, no, they didn't kill anybody. No, the military is not involved in this. The Canadian military, they're sort of like, what are you talking about UFOs? They don't know anything. But when you get the military, the United States, it's like 13% of the budget is military. It's all about military. It's all about, and if you got a $900 million budget, well, you want a $1 trillion division. And these guys want money. Elizondo, that's what that promotional thing was to scare people. In fact, there's the one interesting story, this thing about reflection, that what you see is what you're reflecting. So they had, the 2017 story. So that was OSAP, their program. In 2010, they got shut down. They ran out of money, and then someone gave them some more money, and they were ready to go again. And then some other agency, because they when they worded the program, they said, oh, they didn't really say UFO. So some other agency came in and grabbed that money. So they didn't have any money. So they decided that they've got to get some money. But how are you going to scare money? So if you go in front of a Congress and you say, okay, these are nice people and we can learn stuff from this, they say, get out of here and don't let the door hit you on their way out. But if you say, oh, they're going to eat you and stuff like that, how much money do you want? So that's what they did, is they wanted to get some more money. So at Skinwalker Ranch, they had an event happen at Skinwalker Ranch. They tell the story where these things followed him home, and the little kid got bombarded with these orbs, and he was injured, he was bruised, these orbs were attacking him. That same night, these guys that came back were all special forces guys. They were going to hunt the Skinwalker, and as I say, the Skinwalker said, oh, you want to play Hunt the Skinwalker? We love to play Hunt the Skinwalker. We'll play like that. And they scared the living daylights of these guys. And these guys came home, and it was this hitchhiker thing. They brought this thing home. So the thing was, the night the kid got bombarded by the orbs, that same night, they were desperate for money. They'd gone to two of the top people at Homeland Security, and they'd given them a briefing, and they scared the living shit out of these guys. These guys were so scared they couldn't even sleep. They were saying, this happened at Skinwalker Ranch, this happened, and these guys go, what? And that same night, they stirred up almost like the etheric mess. They got this evil thing going. This kid got bombarded by the orbs, and back at Skinwalker Ranch the same night, they were saying, we got something in Homestead too, and it's in there, and we're scared to go in there, and this whole event happened. It all happened at the same time. And that was the thing. They hyped this thing up, this evil thing, and this evil thing happened to the guys that were doing it. And it's so the whole thing is, you reflect what happens to you. And that's one of the things that the phenomena wants you to know, is that you're creating the universe. You're never a victim. There's nobody doing anything to you. You're creating the universe. And Jim Semivan, who got a 7-hour briefing, he said, scared to living daylights out of him. He was so scared, but they said, well, what did you learn about UFOs? He said, nothing. He said, I will bet you a year of my salary. He's a former top-level CI guy, equivalent of a 2-star general. He said, I'll bet you a year of my salary, my retirement salary, they haven't got a clue what's going on. They got bodies and got crafts, but they don't know what's going on. And so you have this situation where this reflective quality is in there. And Semivan, they asked him, well, what did you learn in the 7-hour briefing? He said, all the psi stuff is real. It's all real. He said, that's real? That's real? Yeah, we did this experiment at this lab. Yeah, we did this. It's all real. And he said he was so devastated by this. He said for 3 months he walked around. And this guy ran covert ops for the CIA. And he said he was so floored by what he'd been told in that briefing. For 3 months he just walked around with days, and his wife said, are you okay? Are you okay? And it was just, his world collapsed. And he's the one that defines this. He said, you got to realize what's going on here. That there may not be any time, no space. You're not sitting on the chair. You're levitated above the chair. The electrons. There's just waves. So there's no such thing as color. All this kind of stuff. And he said you got to realize that in the United States, 53% of people read at a grade 6 level. And he said, and then you're going to take this stuff and drop it on them? No way. And that's what they had said, is we cannot drop this, because it is so weird. It's so weird in terms of what you believe. None of what you believe is right. And it's this whole idea. Even the one guy says, you got to realize there's just waves. There's just these waves going around, and that your eye is taking it, and it's creating this image of color and this sort of stuff. And none of that's all happening inside your head. And there may not be, and even Semivan said, the CIA guy said, there does not appear to be any there. And I say to all the interviews, I say, you tell me, what the hell is he talking about? He got the briefing, 7 hours. What's he talking about? And it's this idea, the world is nothing the way that people think it is. And if you take it to people who really are left brain, and they're scientists because they're very left brain, they're very atheist, agnostic. This is the way the world works. It's very solid. Nothing weird is happening. And to say this is all happening, that's why I say it's not going to be the religious people are going to panic. It's going to be the guys that paid $60,000 a year to go to MIT and suddenly realize that it's all bullshit. All that stuff they told me is nonsense. Those are the guys that are going to be fighting over the cyanide pill, because their whole worldview will crash in front of them. And that's what they're trying to, and that's one of the big stories. They're trying to protect that thing that is just so beyond. And he said to the one high level guy told him, he came to me, he said, Jim, this is indigestible. And that's the way they describe it. It's indigestible. People will never going to be able to handle it. So that's why they're doing that gradual disclosure. They drip this. They put false information around it. Nobody knows who to believe. But the story is getting out, and we're learning a little bit more about the fact that you're creating the world. That it's like God is one thing. We're all sparks of divine, and we are creating the universe through consciousness. We're building, or as John Wheeler, the physicist, said, it's a participatory universe. You are part of the universe. You are creating the universe as it unfolds. God did not create the heaven and earth and then put spirit inside the being. We're creating the heaven and the earth, and God is just sitting back and we're creating it. If you read Michael Newton's Journey of Souls, where he takes people, 7,000 people, lets them die, goes into the spirit world, they talk about building rocks and plants, and you're creating stuff. That is the whole idea, that everything's made out of consciousness. There's no physical world, it's all made out of consciousness, and when you look at it, it exists, it turns into like a physical particle or a wave on the ocean, and when you're not looking, it goes away. Or as Einstein said, I'd like to believe the moon is behind me when I'm not looking. And that's the kind of stuff that they're talking about. It's like, the moon may not be behind you when you're looking. And it's so weird. And the more you look at it, the weirder it gets, the weirder it
So
gets.
the challenge is to come into awareness without going into shock.
Yeah, or that they do it gradually, because you've got to remember the aliens are covering up as well. Whoever is behind this, they're covering up as well. Because
The actual thing is so we don't go into shock.
yeah. But even if you go into shock, you're still going to have a situation where you're going to learn it, because this can be like experience. So people who have the experience go into shock. I mean, they're just devastated by what's happened to them, but they come to the conclusion, yeah, this is right. Nobody's going to convince me. The same as mine. Nobody's ever going to, I don't care what anybody says. I know what I saw, and that's what the big expression, I know what I saw. And that's this knowing thing that people who get the song, like Yesterday by the Beatles, where he knew this is a song, and I got to write this down right away. He writes it down, and then he goes, he thought he plagiarized it. He's asking everybody, do you know this song? And he goes, no, I've never heard that song before in my life. He was so sure this was like this song, and you hear this over and again, this knowing, I know what I saw, I was told this, and this is the way it worked, and that's how it comes. The periodic table came that way. The Einstein had the toboggan thing, going down the speed of light. That's where the dream, that's where that invention came from. The quantum atom by Bohr, he was at a dream of a racetrack, but the guy's talking about the horses going around, how they move from shell to shell, and the horses can't step on the line and stuff like that. And over and again, you see all the inventions, the laser, the hologram, they all came instantaneously in people's heads.
And
We think,
oftentimes it can feel like remembering something.
yeah, oh yeah, that's the way it was to me. It was sort of like you saw it before, and they showed the curtain. And, oh yeah, I forgot, because they showed me. I had an experience on psychedelics where I had the answer to everything in the universe, and it was all I can remember was the first time they showed it to me. I was like, yeah, it looks pretty mechanical. And then the second time they showed it to me, I went, huh, that makes sense. It was almost like they opened the curtain, and I'd seen it before, and I went, oh yeah, I forgot. It was like I'd seen it before, I knew that thing. And that's what they're doing, is the idea is that when you go into the other world, you know everything. And when you come back into the world again, you go through the river of forgetfulness to forget, and that's part of the plan, because we have all the answers. It's not much of a visit. So that's the whole thing, is that when you're on the other side, you know the answer to everything. And there is no thing, and we're coming in for experience, so we have to cut off the knowing, and we come in for experience.
That's fine. So, there's a whole concept of gradual disclosure versus.
Yeah.
I don't understand what's wrong with the shock part though, because like when it happened to me, let's say, if you will, and then everything just went poof, and then you have that dark night of the soul or whatever, that period of where everything starts to crumble, but then you work through it, and then the next day you're like, it's a whole new world.
Yeah.
So
Well, there's 8 million people.
no, but you see, you're open then to whatever is. So it's almost like the wall comes down, and then you're like, okay, so what is then? And then you're, you're open. So.
I think the intelligence people, but you got to remember the government is going to be the same as those people in Age of Disclosure, all very scared. Everybody's against us, all these enemies and stuff like that. And so the things they'll bring up, I came up with 64 reasons. I was trying to figure out why would the government cover up. So I looked at 64 reasons, and they came up with 64 reasons as well. And one of the things is, of course, the stock market. Like if suddenly everybody realizes like oil ain't it, and then they start selling, and then the people are shorting it, and then it starts going down. That's the kind of, but they're living that worldview of everything is going to collapse, everything's going to come apart. And I think that's what the stalling. I think the intelligence would want this out. Would want this thing, because that's what they do. They scare you all the time. That's why I said, why do they wake you up? It doesn't make any sense. They wake you up because they want you to go, oh my God. They want you to dissociate, because that's how you're able to move into the next realm. Said to a number of interviews, can you tell anybody else who's leaked the document besides me? All those guys talked to me. They all stopped talking to me because I leaked all these documents. The Wilson leak document, alien autopsy document, the thing about the Advanced Physics Theoretical Working Group. I had their notes. I leaked all this stuff, and they said, "Don't tell Cameron. He's going to tell everybody." And it's like, damn right. It's like, what's the point? I mean, and what the thing was, there's one of the guys that talked about the download that he got. 2013. His name is Tim Taylor, if you've heard. He's the NASA guy, the top UFO guy for NASA.
He's signed the paper.
Yeah, and he's got all the clearances, but he's got 40-some patents and stuff like this. The one patent that he talked to me about, he said to me, he said, Grant, I'll tell you, I got that idea when I woke up in the morning. He said, the last thing I remember the night before was a hooded figure standing at the end of the bed. I said, really? Could you see its face? No, I couldn't see its face. I said, well, you should go to Yvonne Smith and get regressed. You go to LA all the time. And so we talked about that whole thing about him, and yet that invention that he talked about, that's in the American Cosmic Book, and they talk about it. The company that had that invention there, I don't know how much it was of the company sold for $100 million on NASDAQ. So there's a lot of money. If you can get the whatever technology that the stuff is done in rows and stuff like that. Nolan's got piles of, Putoff's got piles of patents. You look at them all, they all got piles of patents. So there's the aliens are covering up, the scientists are covering up, the government's covering up, and you have everybody's got their vested interest why they're covering up. And to me, it's like, I'll tell anybody anything. People will say to me, I want to tell you something, you got to keep it secret. I say, you tell me, I'm telling everybody. You tell me before, they're coming to me after and say, I told you that was classified. No, you told me that after the fact. You got to tell me that before you tell me the story. And then I'll say, no, I'm not going to keep it secret. I mean, what's the point? What profit of the man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? I mean, who cares? I mean, I'm here to figure it out. It's like a chess game to me.
Do you know Jacques Vallée?
Do
you know his theories about
Yeah, I used to think he was crazy.
They are from outer space.
Yeah, I'm in that.
What do you think about that?
I moved to his camp. A lot of ufologists are moving to that camp.
Yeah, me too.
Where, in fact, this morning I had a download that basically said there's no craft. There's not even a craft. They can make a craft appear, like a something, take it out of the garbage or make a coin appear in front of you. They can do that kind of stuff. They can make it come into the physical world and leave it in the physical world. But in terms of when you start looking at it, there may not be a craft, there may not be anything. It's all illusion. There's no time to
He
speak.
sort of gets it into dwarves, fairies,
Yeah,
every.
well, that's the progressive thing. That
psychic type
it depends
thing.
what your
Culture.
it depends what your background is. So whatever, like Barbara Streisand's stepson said, they told me that when we come into your world, we go into your head, we see what's in your head. If it's elves, dwarfs, aliens, whatever, and we make a lesson from it. We have no other choice. We have to go into your head and see what it is, and that's how we build a lesson for you to teach you. So if you're back in the 18th century and you believe in dwarfs, they appear. And then in 1896, they appeared as wooden ships, like wooden ships with propellers. And the guys were hanging down off of ropes, and they asked them, they were talking in rhymes and riddles. And said they were from Mars. And then when we discovered, oh, they're probably not from Mars, and they said, oh, from Alpha, we're from Zeta Reticuli. And then we in the 60s, then suddenly we got multidimensional. And everybody said, oh, they're multidimensional. And I said, they can't be multidimensional. It's all one thing. It's all consciousness. It's like you're in the water, and you're at the bottom of the water, and you don't know anything. And then you sort of figure something out, or you have an experience, and you sort of float higher in the water, and suddenly, oh, I can see some fish, because you're closer to the surface, and you see fish. And then you go back down and say, I saw these fish. And they say, no, you didn't. There's no such fish. And you go to you float up, and then you go to the fish and say, hey, what level am I on? And the fish says, what do you mean, you idiot? You're in the water. There's no levels. And we want to have this thing about levels, because we want nouns. What science wants to do is make a noun. So you say, there's just nouns. There's this noun, this noun. The only time they're going to interact is when they bounce into each other, and everything's inanimate, everything's not conscious, and nothing's connected. And whereas we say everything's life, everything's conscious, everything's one, everything's connected, the same thing. Whereas science says, no, it's nouns. No, it's a verb. It's one giant verb. It's consciousness, it's a verb, and it's getting bigger, and we're building this thing, and we're creating stuff with our minds. And that's
Do you know
my...
who Caroline Corey is?
Yeah.
What do you think of her?
Yeah, I've interviewed.
Superhuman.
Yeah.
I really like her.
Yeah, she does a lot of the stuff I do. Like she does the children with blindfolds.
Yeah, what's that
stuff.
about? Yeah, I saw that last night.
Well, I want to say thank you, Grant. Thank you for your talk. We'll give a little applause for Grant here. Thank you, Grant.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks for the talk, Grant.
Yeah. Next meeting's at my house next week.